In order for us to be an ambitious industry, in order for us to do all of the great things of which we are capable, we need mentoring, that transfer of knowledge, to be occurring all of the time, to be occurring systematically, and to be driving what we do. There are not the opportunities that would happen in any other industry for us to learn from each other, because we only meet in situations of high demand when we're in production. We really expect people to turn up and know what to do. Typically, a small number of people are highly productive and drive productivity for many other people. We also know from the data that when you take a highly productive individual, highly productive scientist, and you place them next to other junior scientists, they raise all boats. Everybody benefits. And that's the business case for being good at mentoring, because it will be good for business.
David Court, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Julie. I'm very happy to be here.
David, you're a real innovator in our industry. You were the founding head of the Screen Business Studies at AFTRS. You're now at the Compton School, which is the first business school for creatives. And today we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of people never really think about and never really gets interrogated, and that is mentoring. We're going to delve into what mentoring really is, the difference it can make, and how you go about building those great relationships. Can you give us your understanding of what mentoring actually is?
Look, in a practical sense, I guess it's just the simple transfer of knowledge from one person to another. It's usually a senior person to a junior person, and the process can be explicit, I'm going to tell you what to do, or implicit, you're going to watch what I do and maybe learn something. Usually I think mentoring is a bit of both. And it's not always senior to junior. Sometimes it's peer-to-peer and sometimes it's junior to senior. So that's I guess the technical aspect of it. But what I would add to all of that is that, if you think about the tremendous complexity of making a film, right? You think about all of the people, dozens, hundreds of people who come together, the complex processes, the interactions, the solving of problems on the fly, everything that is brought to bear for a movie, a film to happen, or a TV show. Then think of all of the knowledge that sits behind that, all the things you have to know for that to happen. What mentoring is about is the transfer of that knowledge, that great body of knowledge. I mean, some of it you can learn at film school and some of it you can learn in a book, but most of it is learned by being with people, by talking to people, by observing people, by practice. I take mentoring to really mean all of those things. It's the knowledge transfer that happens when you're with people. And so much of what we do is, the kinds of knowledge that really cannot be transferred in any other way.
That's so true. That's certainly been my experience. I feel what I've learned on the job has far exceeded the great study that I've done and I've enjoyed and I've learned things from. But I often say to people we're essentially tradies, like we learn by doing. So that makes me think, why is mentoring essential to the screen industry in particular? And what do we lose when it's absent?
Because we're an industry that accumulates knowledge in this way and shares knowledge in this way, if you don't have a good mentoring system, then you're kind of trapped in a cycle of repeating errors and, trapped in this business of never really knowing what you should do or not being able to perform at the furthest end of competence. So in order for us to be an ambitious industry, in order for us to do all of the great things of which we are capable, we need mentoring, that transfer of knowledge, to be occurring all of the time, to be occurring systematically, and to be driving what we do. Otherwise, I think what gets inhibited in the end is our ambition. If we can't transfer the knowledge about how to do things, then we're kind of, we're stuck in a kind of second tier of production activity. We're not at the top end. The top end requires that smooth, continuous, dynamic transfer of knowledge between people.
And how do you think the Australian screen industry is currently tracking in terms of mentoring?
I think we do an okay job, but the thing I would say is that learning is difficult in our industry, right? And the reason is that we're not corporate. We don't all sit around having cups of tea together all year round. We come together on the fly to make a film, to bring a project off. And the opportunities for learning, they're intense and rapid, but they're not continuous. Furthermore, when people come together, you're kind of expected to know what to do, There's not really the opportunity to sit around and talk about it, and there's not the opportunity either to experiment. We really expect people to turn up and know what to do. So in a sense, there are not the opportunities that would happen in any other industry for us to learn from each other because we only meet in situations of high demand when we're in production. So I think it's actually, a systematic challenge for us to transfer knowledge in this way. It's a thing we need to address.
Yeah, so you would say it's mostly systematic, because I was going to ask, is it also generational or is it personal? But do you think it really is looking at the systems of the way we do things mostly?
I do. I mean, obviously, the willingness to mentor or to be mentored can vary from person to person, but generally I have found people quite willing to share. That's not the issue. The issue is the opportunities to share, and we need to kind of structure those because they don't occur in the ordinary course of business for us, not in the same way that they do in a corporate environment where you're sitting with your peers, from 9 till 5 every day. Endless opportunities for transfer of knowledge, endless opportunities for interchange, endless opportunities for training.
Yeah, you're right. When you're in those big organisations that I've been lucky enough to be in, as well as being a freelancer, there are systems built in through HR departments and things that just don't happen in our mostly freelance environments.
Correct. So, we have to address this specifically and in a quite deliberate way. It's not something that's just going to happen in the course of things.
Yeah. So what's the business case? If we can capture this knowledge and make sure we pass it on, it's going to benefit us all as an industry. It's not just about individuals getting a leg up, right?
Look, the business case, it resides in the fact that we are a knowledge industry. We're like the sciences, where our business is the construction of intellectual property. We create knowledge and we use knowledge to create the products that we sell to the public. In that sort of industry, productivity is the issue, right? So the business case is all about productivity. What we know from a long sequence of data in the sciences is that typically a small number of people are highly productive and drive productivity for many other people. We also know from the data that when you take a highly productive individual, highly productive scientist, and you place them next to other junior scientists, they raise all boats. Everybody benefits. So this is an issue of productivity fundamentally, and that's the business case for being good at mentoring, because it will be good for business.
I mean, there's so much moving so quickly in the screen industry at the moment, but really some of the things you're talking about, they're craft skills and their instinct, and they take time. So in a world where it's AI and it's fast, like, what are the deep, slow skills that really can only be passed on from person to person?
Look, I think in the end, what you learn through mentoring, through the opportunity to sit with others, is judgment. And judgment is the critical thing. It's like, how do you recognize a problem in the first place? How do you see how to solve that problem? The recognition of patterns, all of these things are what comes from slow observation, long-term observation of an industry and a process, right? It's those things that really are imparted by mentoring. I mean, obviously there's quick things you learn, do this, not that. But I really think in the long run, it's, and I'm thinking about my own experience both as mentor and mentee, it's the judgment that you learn by observing others and seeing how they solve problems.
Yeah, and craft too, I think.
Craft is judgment, isn't it? Craft is judgment. We learn the sort of hand skills and we learn them quite quickly, but the judgment is what really matters. It's what separates the amateur from the professional.
Yeah, yeah. So what makes a good mentor?
Good question. I would say really it's just two things. The first is they have to be expert, and that sounds obvious, but quite often people want to mentor you and they may not be expert in the domain where you want mentoring. And the second thing is generosity of spirit. They have to be generous. If they're generous and they're expert, it works. The generosity makes it work, because they will be patient, they will listen, they'll understand what it is you need to learn, and they'll stay with you while you learn it.
Yeah, that's interesting about that they need to be an expert, because I think sometimes people see someone who's high profile and think they want that person as a mentor. But, to really dig down and go, does that person have the actual skills that you need? And are they the right person who's going to be able to pass them on to you?
Quite often people don't know what it is they need. As part of the problem is you don't know what the problem is. What is the thing that I don't have? You really need someone outside of you to guide you on that question, because you can be just blind to it. I'm speaking here from personal experience. You can just not understand what it is you're missing, and whereas somebody outside who's got long experience, who's got that pattern recognition that I talked about, will see what it is that you need and, will lead you to it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting conundrum because you're right. Because a lot of what we do, producing ends up being a quite solo endeavor. Like, no one's really going to tell you what you're doing wrong when you're a producer, or not to your face anyway. And then you don't also see other people doing it. And I think a lot of the time roles can be like that. You get there, you're suddenly given the chance to be an HOD or a producer or something, and you just have to deliver. So, firstly, who's going to tell you? Who's got the time? And how do you make space to be aware of your blind spots so you can keep growing and learning? It's really hard.
In that professional context too, you can't confess that you don't know, right? Or it's difficult to confess that you don't know. So we're trapped in this cycle of, we come together, it's a fast exchange. Everyone has to be professional on the day and do the job they're hired for. There's not the opportunity to stop and say, hey, wait, was there another way? Or I don't understand this bit. Those things don't obtain. So you have to create the context for that outside of the context of production, outside of the course of ordinary business. And you're right, for producers and indeed for other practitioners too, it's often a very solitary profession. There is not the chance to sit with peers or to sit with seniors, to sit with the masters and learn from them. So we have to go about that in a quite conscious, deliberate way. We have to make those opportunities.
One of the things I always encourage people who are looking for mentors to do is to look at how they can give. And this is something I always come back to in my life. I don't look for opportunities where I can get without also looking for an opportunity where I can give. So, in the spirit of that, how can the relationship work both ways in terms of mentoring?
Look, I think it invariably does. A successful mentorship is one where people are sitting with each other. Maybe it's only one time, or maybe it's a dozen times. But, if you're the mentor, you're listening and paying attention carefully to the person you're with, and you will learn things. It's like when I speak to people who mentor for us, at Compton School, they will talk about giving back, and that is certainly one part of it. But the other thing that they're there for is the opportunity to see what's happening. What is the next generation doing, thinking? It is absolutely a two-way process, and that's really a large part of its appeal, I think, for both sides of the relationship, the engagement.
And now more than ever, I certainly am, particularly that, under 35 demographic. I'm so interested in what they're doing, and not in any particular mentoring way, but watching, learning, appreciating the new ways that they're engaging with media.
And it's always like that. We're an industry which is constantly buffeted by technology change. There is always some new thing, some new way, some new process, some new piece of tech, some new piece of gear. There's always something that's upending the way we've been doing things. And you're right, it's always, or nearly always, it's young people who've twigged to that fastest and adopt fastest. So they are the people who are going to teach us about the new. And that's why I think it's such a productive thing. It goes both ways because there is really something for young people to teach old people. Young dogs, can teach the old dogs to the extent the old dogs can learn new tricks.
Yeah. So in that relationship, like what do you think is a realistic expectation of a mentor?
I mean, obviously sometimes it happens quite informally and there wasn't even an ask. You just find yourself with someone who turns out to be prepared to share with you. But quite often it's a more formal situation. And in those more formal situations, I think it's really important that you as mentee ask for what you want in an open-ended way so that if you're wrong about what it is you need, the mentor can address that. So it's really about asking or saying where you want to get to. What's the place you want to occupy next? Where are you trying to be? And once you explain that, I think a mentor can help you figure out how to do that. I think it's really important to have a clear brief. And whenever I'm trying to set up a mentorship, I always ask the mentee to write a brief and to make it as specific and granular as possible and not to ask too much. Just see the thing that they want, see the place they want to get to, say that, and let the mentor respond. I mean, people ask the moon, of course, and you may get the moon, but I don't think you should ask it. I think you should ask for something closer, and maybe you'll get lucky and the moon will be delivered too.
Well, that comes back to, I think, a confusion sometimes people have with mentors, that they think my mentor is someone who will open a whole lot of doors for me, which, like you say, it may happen, but that's probably not the right spirit to come into the relationship with. I love what you say about having a plan. That's something that I've always done with the people I've been lucky enough to have mentoring me, like to go, if we're meeting up, the things that I can do is I can pay for the meal, I can pay for the coffee, and I can come with a really clear questions that I've prepared, that I've taken time to really honour this hour or whatever it is, the time that person's given me. I think that makes a real difference.
For sure. It just makes it feel like something manageable. And of course, it can always open out to be something more than that. And it could end up being a partnership. Who knows? Like that does happen. But I think people should not go in with the thought of that and the idea that it's transactional, that, you're going to use this person as a ladder to get to something else is not a good way to approach it, and I try to discourage that. It's an open-ended ask in the sense that you can't preconceive or predetermine what the answer might be. You have to come at it in an open-minded, open-ended way and be instructed. Don't think that you know what it is that you need or what it is that this person can do for you, because they can maybe do something quite different.
When you meet a great person and it's a great exchange, they come, they're prepared, you can see them building, growing. Like, I think organically you do end up keeping your ear out for opportunities and opening doors in different ways. But yeah, it's just to do with the kind of whether you have that expectation or whether you just come in really valuing the relationship for what it is. Do you think we have a moral obligation to be mentors in whatever industry we are in as we kind of get stronger in our craft skills and go further on in our career?
Moral's a big word, but I do think there is some kind of moral obligation, and it's because, as I described at the start, because we cumulatively, collectively share this great body of knowledge that we have all contributed to, but also drawn from. It's a well. We put water in the well, but we also draw from the well. And because we've drawn from the well, we have an obligation to the people who come after to also let them draw from the well. I think that's absolutely part of the deal.
Take the hand that's offered to you, and as you take that hand, put your hand out behind you and pull someone up as well.
All great knowledge enterprises, all great knowledge industries work that way. We all add our piece. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and in return, we gain the right to take. So it's a two-way thing always. You give and you take and you give.
You're running a specific program on this at the moment. What is the program? How does it work?
So this is in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Rainmakers is conjuring up this idea that, our seniors, that, senior creative practitioners are rainmakers. They make things happen for other people and they make projects happen. And one of the things they can make happen is this transfer of knowledge. We have 3 excellent partners there. We're partnered with Script to Screen and with the Vista Foundation and the New Zealand Film Commission. The program has essentially 3 parts. One part is mentorship. We have a dozen mentees and we are setting up for each of them significant mentorships, both in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but also in Australia. The mentoring has that approach of a brief that is given to the mentor, and then they construct a process together. We do it as a kind of a gift economy. So to our mentors, we gift places in this program that they can pass to others they wish to support. So it's a circular economy in that sense. The second part of the program is a series of workshops. Instead of being one-to-one, it's one-to-few. So we bring all of our mentees together, and one of our rainmakers, one of our mentors, will speak to a topic in which they are expert and which they wish to share with the group. And they run through the year. And then the third element of it is a series of podcasts, interviews with our rainmakers, our mentors, which go to their experience and the challenges they've faced and their views on the direction of the industry, challenges that everybody is facing. We're about to release the very first season of those podcasts, and we'll make those available, to anyone interested.
I love that you've come at it from 3 different ways, sort of the personal, the group, and then something that's legacy that people can keep building on over time and come back to. I feel that way about this podcast too. Like, we want people to, have evergreen content that they can come back and keep learning from. You wanted to have a depth to the learning. Is that why you developed it that way?
There is no one solution here. We've got this large challenge, which is how do we take all of the hard-won knowledge of our senior practitioners now? How do we take that, all those things they've learned, all those things they've figured out the hard way, how do we take that and get it into the hands and the minds of the next generation so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel? That's what we're trying to solve. And I guess my approach was to say, well, mentoring, one-to-one mentoring is one part of that, bringing people together, and particularly the mentees. They like to be together, like to come together, like to, to meet each other. And in some ways, that may be the most valuable part of what we're doing. Don't forget, mentoring can be peer-to-peer. It can be one person to their exact peer. It's not always a vertical relationship. It can be horizontal.
Actually, I was at Afters when you were running the Screen Business course. And I remember you saying that to us then, saying, look around the room, look sideways. These people who are in a room with you are going to be your colleagues moving forward in your career. And I think that sometimes people do look up instead of looking sideways and seeing how they can share knowledge between each other, because you do suddenly look around when you're 15 years into this career, and those people are now the people who are producing or heads of department or running networks or all manner of things. You come through together.
Yeah, that's right. You're sitting in a room of 20-year-olds and you think you shouldn't pay any attention to the people around you, but greatness is in the room. You just don't know it yet.
Maybe they don't know it yet either. um, so what impact are you seeing from the Rainmakers program?
Look, it's those peer-to-peer connections. It's the light bulb moments. What often happens is people can get stuck, and you can't quite see what's the way forward. But someone from outside can see it, and especially someone, with a few more years behind them. That's, I think, the most valuable thing. But also we've got people in the program who are making not career changes, but I suppose you could call them swerves, like a writer to a showrunner. And that's a hell of a big step to make. And, having someone who can help you answer, maybe some dumb questions. There are no dumb questions, of course, but also help to reshape your thinking so that you can compass this new role. Generally speaking, most people follow kind of zigzag pathways in their careers in this industry. You need help at each zig and each zag, right? You need someone who's been there before to help show you how to do it and what to expect and what not to do and so on. And just, give you the thinking that goes with the role. But then, as you say, the legacy part is the podcast, capturing for now what someone thinks and sharing that as widely as possible. And as you say, it should be ongoing, right? That process should never stop.
I think I want to do this course. So, okay, so you're listening to this, you want to find a mentor. Like, what do you advise someone to do?
As we discussed a moment ago, don't look for the person who you think is going to give you a hand, or, don't think of that person as a ladder. Look around and see and think who might know something that would be useful for you to know too. So, do a little bit of homework. It takes a while to find the right person. It's not something you can do quickly. You have to figure it out, and then, of course, you have to negotiate it. So I think it's about getting a good sense of who would be the right person to mentor you, and then writing a brief, saying what it is that you are trying to pull off, the place you're trying to be, the thing you want to learn, and putting that in a brief and approaching that person directly. I don't think there's any point in shilly-shallying around. You may as well go direct to them. Most people, in my experience, will respond. They may say a flat no, but hey, you've got an answer. Send the brief so that they understand what it is that is being asked of them, and understand that in particular that it's not an open-ended thing that will be an unpredictable drain on their time. That sort of approach, I think, is what works.
I think that's really great advice. I think, again, just as someone, who gets approached, as I'm sure you do, like to say, hey, I'm trying to make this particular transition. I see that you've got this knowledge. I'd really love for you to share it with me. And what I'm asking for is a limited time, because I don't think in all the time that I've been mentoring people, I don't think anyone has put a time limit on it. And then you do think, gosh, this is forever, and you're trying to manage your own career. And as someone who's very dedicated to wanting to give back and put water back in the well, it would be really helpful, I think, for people to say, hey, would you meet with me for 3 times or 5 times? And, there have been opportunities that I've had through the Natalie Miller Fellowship or Women in Film and Television where they do set it up in that way. But I think informally it's harder to do that. So that's really brilliant advice. Anyone who's listening, set a time limit on it and be really clear and be targeted in why you've come to that particular person. I think that's really great. The other thing that's interesting to talk about, David, is like mentors aren't just for early in your career, are they? Like, I want mentors now. I need mentors now. Like we all want to learn, whether it's just that insight to our blind spots or really just trying to grow new skills. It's something that you keep coming back to in your career.
I totally agree. It's the zigs and the zags. We zig and we zag through our careers, and at each zig and zag, there are things we need to learn, and we're most likely to learn it from someone who's already there or has done it before or who is a peer doing it the same sort of thing at the same time. So we're always reaching out to each other and sharing the knowledge. We hold this body of knowledge between us collaboratively, collectively, and it's a constant negotiation with that. We're always depositing and withdrawing, and we're always taking away and giving. I don't think that ever stops. I think it continues all the way, and the irony of it is that eventually your mentees become your mentors.
Yeah, that's true. That really is true. Your entire career really has been on building bridges within this industry through education and learning. So what is your hope for the next generation of storytellers?
Oh, it's such a big open-ended question, but I guess if I had to pin it to one thing, I would say that they find and connect with their audiences, because I think in this industry, audience is hard. Finding and connecting and staying with an audience is a very demanding thing, and it's hard to do well, and we're often wrong. But audience should be the true north, because if you can solve audience, you can solve every other problem in the business. It all flows from that. It's certainly the part that I'm most interested in, the business part, all gets solved if you can find an audience.
That's perfect advice. I love this conversation. It's such a great topic, and I really love the way that you're talking about putting water in and drawing water. I think that's an excellent analogy for all of us to think through in terms of what we've got, what we continue to get from this industry, and how we give back. I always, in this podcast, asking people to pitch a big idea for the industry. If you could pitch one big idea that would make this industry better for all of us, what would you say?
I think it would be to that question of audience. There are so many distractions and so many objectives we want to serve, but if you lose sight of audience, then the business gets hard, and we lose control of our destiny. We're dependent on funding agencies. We're dependent on others to accept our vision. We lose the independence, the indie producer. That's the thing that ends up being at risk. I just think that creative world is constitutionally independent. To be an artist is always to have one foot on the outside, one on the inside. And I think that independence, that orneriness, that kind of stubborn streak is the most valuable thing, because I think it's what ends up driving the enterprise, driving the industry. If you don't have the stubborn streak, why are you going to hang in there trying to do this? So the stubborn streak we have to protect. We're always dependent in one way or another. We're always at risk of being captured by the agendas of our patrons. Artists have complained about that since the year dot. But I think it's on artists, on filmmakers to protect their independence, to go to the places where they can serve their vision without too much compromise. And what keeps you in the game is success, and success is audience. That is what the business is ultimately about.
Guard your stubbornness and get obsessed with audiences.
That's it.
So great to talk to you, David.
And you, Julie. Thank you.
We Interrupt This broadcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians and first storytellers of these regions. Always was, always will be.